Namaskar. Hello, friends. We will look at Jnana Marga. Those who are intellectually better endowed and in addition are disinterested in the worldly life can follow the Jnana Marga. That path is difficult and can be followed only by a rare few seekers. The others, who may be a much larger number, who cannot detach from the worldly life easily, can follow Karma Yoga path or Bhakti Marga. Let us look at Bhakti Marga. What is Bhakti? Surrender to God is one of the fundamental principles of spiritual pursuit, and that is Bhakti. Looked at in a different way, surrender to God is discarding ego, discarding worldly identity, and all the associated likes and dislikes. In other words, surrender in this context is another form of non-duality. It is accepting that I am not different from the singular Paramatman. I have no desires relating to my limited bodily identity. I have surrendered all my likes and dislikes, desires, fears, and I am living in God consciousness. There is only God and no I versus the rest, separate from God. If such an attitude of surrender can be cultivated and internalized permanently, that is liberation. It is important to understand the correct meaning of bhakti. It is not quite the external acts of worshipping some deities with elaborate material and procedures, but bhakti should be what the Geeta calls elsewhere as a vyabhichari bhakti, meaning devotion that is in complete surrender to the singular by discarding all identity with the limited bodily existence. It is the state of mind in which the bhakt completely merges with the singular. In that kind of bhakti, there is no question of the bhakta expecting anything in return from God, because there is no giver and receiver at all. Also, in such bhakti, the external ritualistic acts are immaterial, and rather the mental state of the bhakta is the only thing that is important. In this regard, Gita says clearly that whatever the bhakta offers in worship, whether a fruit, a flower, a leaf, or just plain water, it is dear to God if offered in complete sincerity and devotion. Why bhakti? The different ways are suited to different types of people. Bhakti, that is devotion and surrender, is the best, the easiest, and most powerful path. A sincere bhakta will remain in permanent inner bliss that is no longer dependent on the external world. How to do bhakti or worship? A bhakta needs to change his outlook completely. He needs to discard his worldly outlook, likes, dislikes, etc., and stop seeking sense pleasures. He needs to discard all the vices like anger, etc., and establish himself in detachment. Bhakti has everything to do with the mental attitude and nothing with the external rituals performed and materials offered to God. It is all about a sincere God consciousness while remaining engaged in the day-to-day activity. It is about an attitude that my life is for the divine and not for myself. Having said that, the external rituals and materials offered by way of a ritualistic worship may help the bhakta focus on God. To that extent, it may be useful to engage in ritualistic worship. But it is important to remember that God does not need all that from us for His benefit. He is Almighty and there is nothing that a bhakta can give him except sincere devotion. So rituals of bhakti are only secondary, if at all. Besides, often most people engaging in worship based on material offerings and elaborate rituals get entangled and confused with the question, am I doing it right? As a result of which a fear arises in their mind about getting punished by the deity if they are doing something wrong. Engaging in worship but having one's mind elsewhere in mundane day-to-day living cannot get the real benefit of worship. Instead, even 5 minutes of simple, sincere, and focused mental engagement with the divine is better than 50 minutes of elaborate worship during which the mind strays to the issues at the work day ahead. It is not necessary for a true bhakta to bother about any dharma, that is organized religion, that is founded on the concepts of papa and punya, that is sin and credit for pious deeds, and even hell or heaven. There are different methods by which liberation can be attained through bhakti. Worshipping the unmanifest Brahman, though most potent, is rather difficult. However, worshipping a god with some form is easier. Saguna bhakti is worshipping God with some form, like an idol or a picture. Nirguna bhakti is worshipping an unmanifest God. Nirguna bhakti is regarded as superior but is much more difficult because it is very difficult to focus on a formless God. On the contrary, it is that much easier to focus on an image of God or a deity. However, the worship must be with complete non-dual focus on the image of God to the exclusion of our bodily identity. The mindset must be such that one is not conscious of anything other than God. When a seeker manages to perform such worship, he gets liberated from the worldly life in due course when he completely stops thinking about it, all the time remaining engrossed in and merged with God. I may, I may add that such a mindset is possible only when one attains total vairagya, that is detachment from and or disinterest in the physical world. That is liberation while still living in this world. Bhakta's external life in the physical world. A truly devoted seeker has faith in the divine and remains engrossed in him without harboring any desires. Shri Krishna asserts in the Geeta that the divine takes care of the bhakta's day-to-day needs and hence he does not have to worry about his day-to-day life. This should be interpreted to mean that such a true bhakta, being desireless, has very minimum needs and those are easily provided for in some manner by the divine. In other words, such a bhakta does not work with the aim of making our life as much comfortable and enjoyable as possible, like most of us do. However, his minimum needs will somehow be taken care of. It may be by way of bhiksha, that is alms, or it may be by way of support from some other people in the family, or even from outside. Or he could earn it through some kind of minimum work or help he may render in a household that is not onerous and that allows him to remain in God consciousness even while doing those simple chores. It will all depend on the individual's situation, but it should not be misinterpreted to mean that a bhakta can get whatever he wants from the divine. No, sorry. True bhakti obliterates past sins. Neither a seeker's past deeds nor his caste or sex matter. if he surrenders to God in all sincerity. Even if he had been a big sinner in the past, he can still get liberated if he now pursues sincere bhakti. Sage Valmiki is the prime example of this. He was a robber for most part of his early life. But once he felt sincere repentance and started pursuing bhakti, he became a great sage and was liberated. What it indicates is that it is what you are here and now that is important, and not what you did in the past. It can be interpreted to mean that whatever happens at a given moment is like a ripple on the ocean. Once that moment is past, whatever happened in that moment ceases to matter. Just like the ripple disappears and then no signs of it remain. In effect, we should focus on the present moment, every single moment, and remain in God consciousness till the last breath, and then liberation is assured. Why most ordinary people cannot pursue true bhakti? After experiencing the all-pervading singular Godhead principle in the form of Vishwarupa, that is the universal, all-inclusive form of the singular God, Arjuna longs for the normal form of Shri Krishna. This seems to indicate that an ordinary embodied soul living in this physical world is comfortable with the ordinary that he is used to. He is not comfortable with anything that is extraordinary. This is the reason why most people are comfortable leading a normal worldly life and do not care much for the spiritual. Shri Krishna then assumes the normal form again and tells Arjuna that the only way a seeker can be comfortable with the singular concept represented by the Vishwarupa is through bhakti in total God consciousness without any feeling of duality whatsoever. So long as one has even the slightest world consciousness with his physical body in it, the real spiritual experience of oneness cannot be had. After having discussed Bhakti Marga, let's come to Karma Marga. Recognize big picture and our role in it. This creation is a huge game for the Creator. He has designed it in a way only He knows. We are all like robots driven by an underlying software program, which is the combination of three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. And this program makes us play our own little roles without knowing what will be future outcome in this game. Our mind often tends to stray anywhere and everywhere, jumping from one option to another. However, what we actually end up doing is entirely in accordance with our nature, that is the underlying software or gunas. So the lesson is not to bother too much about what has actually happened in the past or what will happen in the future, but rather simply focus on the action in the present moment. The creation is like a big picture painted on a huge canvas, and we as individuals are just small patches of color that make up the big picture. Even blank patches on the canvas are as essential for the big picture as are attractive shapes and colors. Everything belongs to the big picture and is perfect in its place. We will stop here today and continue the next time. Until then, bye, take care.